Hello? Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. We're glad to have everyone here tonight. If everyone could please start finding their seats, we'll start our program at 1. Thank you so much. Hello, hello, and welcome everyone. We'll be starting momentarily, so if everyone can find their seats, we'll be starting in just a moment. Thank you.
Hello? Oh, that's nice. Good afternoon. No, we're going to go again because this is a wonderful occasion. Good afternoon. My name is Faisal Abdulwallah. I'm the Chazen Distinguished Chair in Art, and I'm also the Associate Dean for the Arts here at UW-Madison School of Education. We extend a warm welcome to all of our guests, near and far. For you all here in person today, and the dozens of families and friends and colleagues who are joining us through a live stream of this event, I give my royal wave. Welcome. It's wonderful to celebrate the more than 80 OTD, PhD, and MFA graduates from the School of Education and their achievements. As an Associate Dean at the school, I see firsthand the contributions and brilliance of our students, including those of you in this room. We're here to celebrate and congratulate you. Today is your day. It's my great pleasure to introduce to you the Dean of the School of Education, Diana Hess. Dean Hess is the Karen A. Falk Distinguished Chair of Education and a member of the National Academy of Education. In her nearly 8 years in this role, she has built upon the foundation of this excellent School of Education with broad support across the arts, health, and education. She has launched new and innovative programs for faculty, staff, and students, including the largest scholarship program the school has undertaken, the University of Wisconsin-Madison School of Education Wisconsin Teacher Pledge. Join me in welcoming our Dean, Diana Hess.
Thank you, Faisal. I want to welcome all of you. I'm so honored to be with you today to celebrate this momentous occasion. And I want to thank all of the family and friends and faculty and staff for joining here today. Congratulations to the graduates. You have done something remarkable. You are earning the highest degree in your field. And that is something for which I know you are incredibly proud. We are incredibly proud of you. I know that your faculty and staff you have worked with are proud, and I am positive that your family and friends are proud. So let's start this celebration by all of us congratulating our graduates. So graduates, you are here today from departments in the arts, in health, and in education. And I'm often asked, how did it come to be that this School of Education, which by the way was just ranked by US News and World Report as the 3rd best school of education in the United States out of 300 ranked, but we are unusual because we have the arts and we have health and we have education in our School of Education. And how did that come to be? And here's the answer. Consider this question. What does it take to lead a good life? Well, it takes health, and it takes the arts, and it takes education. So we, the UW-Madison School of Education, like to call ourselves the School of the Good Life. Now, in addition to all the work that you've done to earn your degree, all the classes you have taken, all the research you have done, all the creative products that you have made, you have also done a lot of work while you were here to improve this campus and improve this community. And I want to start today by providing 3 examples of graduates in this room who are not unlike the rest of you. In fact, they typify all of you, but they have done remarkable things to have an effect not only in their field, but on others. So let me begin by talking about Praveen Marapelli, who is graduating today So Praveen is graduating today with a Master's of Fine Arts from the Art Department, and he's using what he has learned here to design social art programs where participants are actively engaged to contribute creatively, to connect across cultures, and to engage in dialogue about real-world problems. These projects, both here in the United States, here in Madison specifically, and in India, I would argue are aligned with the Wisconsin idea to connect rural, urban, and global audiences and build a robust community for positive social change beyond the classroom. Let me provide you another example. Sasha Smith. Now, Sasha is a PhD graduate in rehabilitation counselor education, and she has centered her research on the employment experiences of Bahamian college and university graduates who have disabilities. Currently, there are no vocational rehab programs for persons with disabilities in the Bahamas. She has investigated how this population prepares for employment without vocational rehabilitation support. She has examined the barriers experienced as they navigate the job market and factors that would be helpful in the process of pursuing employment. She will make her impact by introducing vocational support for persons with disabilities in the Bahamas. And here's a third example, Janelle Anderson. Now, Janelle is receiving her PhD in Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis. Janelle worked for over 20 years as a teacher in Wisconsin. As a matter of fact, when I first came to Wisconsin as an assistant professor, I met Janelle, and I was told there is this extraordinary teacher, and when she came here to get her PhD, I was so thankful because I knew what a difference she would make. And she's been studying what causes people to want to go into teaching, what causes them to stay in teaching, how we develop a culture of care so teachers can care for their students and care for one another. She will go forward, I am positive, as a faculty member where she will make a huge difference helping us deal with one of the most significant problems facing our country, which is a shortage of teachers. Next week, like is the case with many of you, Janelle will be going to a university to interview for an assistant professor position. Join me in welcoming everyone here who's still interviewing and Janelle, and congratulating you and wishing you the best of luck on those interviews. Now, I said that those are just examples, and every one of you is graduating today could be an example both of doing extraordinary work in very difficult programs. It is not easy to get an MFA from an extraordinarily highly ranked art department. It is not easy to get a PhD from these departments that have extremely high standards, as they should. But in addition to that work, I know that what you'll be doing going forward will be having an effect on the communities where you will be living and working, and for that we are very thankful. I also want to thank you for voting. So I just got an email this morning from Travis Wright, who's a professor in our counseling psych department and also is the faculty director of the Morgridge Center for Public Service on this campus. And one of the things that that center does is to work collaboratively with schools and colleges and other units on campus to make sure that all of our students get the message that we don't care who you vote for, but boy, do we care that you vote. And a lot of work is put into ensuring that the barriers to voting are reduced. And the article that Travis sent me this morning had the incredible good news from the U.S. Department of Census that Wisconsin young voters led the way, first in the nation in voter turnout in the midterm election. That's because of UW-Madison. Bravo. And now it's time to give thanks. So I want to begin by thanking the incredible staff and faculty we have in the School of Education at UW-Madison. They've worked incredibly hard over the last several years, as all of you have, during a pandemic, during a time of racial reckoning, during a time when it was extremely challenging to keep focused on what we were doing. And the faculty and staff in the School of Education have really done an extraordinary job. So I would like all of the faculty and staff to stand up and the rest of us to thank them for their great work. Now, in addition to faculty and staff, it is clear that none of you would have been able to accomplish what you've accomplished without your families, without your parents and your aunts and your uncles and your cousins, and for many of you, your children, and without your friends. And I know that there are so many of you in this room who are so proud of the people in your family and in your friendship networks who are graduating. So graduates, why don't you stand up and let's give all of those folks a rousing round of applause. Stand up, graduates. So now we are here for this strange thing called a hooding ceremony. And I know that many of you are the first person in your family to graduate with a terminal degree. And my hunch is that you got a question like this: hooding ceremony? What's a hooding ceremony? So let me answer that question. So the tradition of the academic hood goes back actually to medieval times. It's a way to signify that somebody has done the work and has met the standards for a terminal degree. Different hoods have different colors representing different fields. If you're interested in learning more about that, it's explained in your program. But in addition to the fact that this is your graduation, it is also your official hooding ceremony. So when each graduate walks across the stage with their advisor, and in some cases with two advisors, they will be hooded. And that hooding represents something that is really significant. It represents that you are now part of a scholarly or artistic community of people who have achieved at great levels. So the hooding is a big deal, and we're going to get to that right now. But before we begin moving to that part of the ceremony, I'm going to ask that the degree candidates from the department or from the program of occupational therapy, from counseling psychology, and from curriculum and instruction, so that's 3 groups, I'm going to ask that you stand up if you're the degree candidates and move to that part of the room where we're going to start getting you lined up. So again, stand up if you're from occupational therapy, counseling psychology, or curriculum and instruction. Just stand up and start moving that way. And staff there will explain to you what will happen next. So now I'd like to introduce our Senior Associate Dean, Adam Nelson. Adam Nelson is a faculty member in Educational Policy Studies and History. He is a Distinguished Achievement Professor, and he also, in his role as Senior Associate Dean, quite literally manages the entire academic program, and I just said provost because we consider Adam to be like the provost of the School of Education. And as you're going to see in just a minute, he also is a very talented MC. So before I ask Adam to come to the stage, I do want to say congratulations to all the graduates. I'm really proud of you. I'm proud to be a dean of a school of education that has this many students who have achieved something that is so momentous. So please, one more round of applause. Congratulations, graduates. And now, please join me in welcoming Adam Nelson.
Hello, everybody. I am so excited to be here today and join you all in celebrating the achievements of our graduates. We are really in for a treat as we recognize their individual accomplishments en route to their OTD degrees, PhD degrees, and MFA degrees. So I'm going to give the graduates from the first group and all of those who are about to come up some instructions about how our process is going to work. So when you checked in at the registration table out beyond those doors, you got a card with your name, your department, and a number. As your departments are called up, and I'll be sort of orchestrating that as we go along, line up according to the numbers on your cards. Wear your robe and give your hood to your escort, your advisor or advisors. They should be unbuttoned. I forgot to button mine when I was coming up here, but there's a little button on the back. Make sure it's undone so they can get it over your head. So then as I call your names and read a brief description of your thesis work, come up to the stage and give your hood, which is in your advisor's hands, to that person, and they will put it over your head, and they will be assisted in that process by Dean Hess. And then remain on the stage while a photograph is taken. We're going to have more opportunities for more photos after the ceremony has concluded. Okay, so now that we've got all of that clear, I hope, we'll see, we're going to start our program with the recipients of the Doctorate in Occupational Therapy, and then we'll move on to counseling psychology students and curriculum and instruction students. So without further ado, I'm going to call forward the first of our recipients of the OTD, Doctorate in Occupational Therapy students. The first is Desiree Taylor Hayes. Desiree is graduating as a first-generation college student. Her doctoral capstone is focused on creating learning experiences to build advocacy skills in occupational therapists. Desiree is a practicing pediatric occupational therapist and hopes to disseminate her doctoral work and gain adjunct teaching experience in higher education. Her hood is bestowed by clinical professor Sharon Gartland. Sharon has a lot of graduates going through, so she'll just stay put. Our next graduate is Sunshine Broren. Sunshine's focus, go ahead. Sunshine's focus in her practice and capstone project is the role of occupational therapy in mental health. She plans to pursue an academic position while continuing to work in pediatric mental health. Her academic hood is conferred by Sharon Gartland. Next is Cara Jo Daly. Cara's doctoral capstone focused on innovating occupational therapy education with a special focus on interactive, case-based learning, a type of learning in which students apply their knowledge to different real-world scenarios. She's passionate about being an educator who implements creative educational interventions for students by adding art elements to traditionally non-art-based teaching. She strives to bridge the gap from classroom to clinical practice, and her hood is conferred by Sharon Gartland. Next is Ashley Parker. Ashley is a first-generation graduate. Her capstone project focused on training school professionals to build connections with children through play. Ashley continuously advocates for all children with disabilities, but particularly those from low-income households. She graduates with an advanced certificate in leadership from LEND, the Leadership Education in Neurodevelopment and Related Disabilities organization, and also works as an occupational therapist in the Madison School District. Her hood is conferred by Sharon Gartland. Next is Yasmina Ugayor. I'm sorry about that. Ugayor. Graduating as a first-generation college student and three-time Badger, Yasmina is the first in her family to receive a doctoral degree. She also works as a school occupational therapist at the Madison Metropolitan School District. Yasmina is passionate about advocacy, leadership, and policy reform, and she's thankful for her family, siblings, partner, and cohort for their endless support. Her hood is conferred by Sharon Gartland. And next is Cheryl Lynn Butler. Cheryl's capstone project focused on the work she's doing using horses to treat youth who are at risk for sexual exploitation. She articulated the role of occupational therapy in the equine-assisted co-treatment model, which she helped to pioneer at Hold Your Horses in Greenfield, Minnesota. She looks forward to presenting her work at the APA conference in Washington, D.C. Her hood is conferred by Sharon Gartland. So this concludes the conferral of hoods for our Doctor of Occupational Therapy graduates, and we're now going to move on to the first group of PhD graduates, beginning with the Department of Counseling Psychology. Our first graduate is Zubin Duvitri. Duvitri, I'm sorry. I have very helpful phonetic spellings, and sometimes I still get it wrong. Zubin's dissertation is about psychological and system-based factors which inhibit the well-being of South Asian students. Seeing the erasure of South Asian narratives, Zubin is looking to continue his future in academia and currently interviewing for faculty positions to continue his mission of advocacy for South Asian student well-being. Zubin's hood is bestowed by his advisor, Professor Alberto Gloria. Next is Chase Ochrak. Chase's research and clinical work focuses on justice-impacted populations. Her dissertation examined adaptation and recovery processes in formerly incarcerated youth. She's completing her clinical internship and will begin a postdoctoral fellowship in forensic psychology, both with the state of Washington. She hopes to continue as a researcher and advocate for justice-impacted groups, and her hood is conferred by Professor William Hoyt. Our next graduate is Meyer. Meyer is completing a doctorate in counseling psychology with an emphasis on health psychology. Meyer's dissertation focuses on variables influencing resiliency following major burn injuries. During their studies, Meyer also launched a community mental health practice that predominantly serves marginalized individuals. Meyer's hood is bestowed by advisor and mentor, Professor Alberto Gloria. Our next PhD graduate is Anna Peterson. Anna's dissertation focused on qualitatively mapping therapists' clinical decision-making with clients engaged in the sex trade. She has accepted a position as a psychologist with the VA in Portland, Maine. Anna's hood is bestowed by her advisor, Associate Professor Travis Wright. Our next graduate is Jamie Lamb. As a first-generation college student, Jamie's dissertation examined biases surrounding BDSM practitioners among mental health professionals. He hopes to build a practice that prioritizes care for underserved racial and sexual gender minorities and will provide training to clinicians who share this vision. His hood is bestowed by Professor Alberto Gloria. So this concludes our conferral of hoods for PhD graduates in counseling psychology. And before I begin with our PhD graduates from curriculum instruction, I'm going to ask candidates from the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis, the Department of Educational Policy Studies, and the Department of Educational Psychology to stand up and start making your way to your left side of the room. So, moving on to the graduates from the Department of Curriculum and Instruction. Our first PhD graduate from Curriculum Instruction is Danny Miller. Yay! Danny's work focuses on understanding how pre-service teachers, or teachers in the process of completing courses, make sense of their teaching philosophies with a particular interest in helping pre-service teachers develop deeper connections of culturally responsive teaching. He hopes to share his experiences and expertise with pre-service teachers in the future. Danny's hood is bestowed by his advisor, Professor Doneen Hassett. Our next graduate is Ronza Veltri-Torres. Yay! Ronza's dissertation explores the narratives of community college students taking non-credit-bearing remedial math and how their identities around math have influenced what they see as possible for themselves. Ronza will start in the fall as an assistant professor of mathematics education at the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. Her hood is bestowed by her advisor, Associate Professor Maxine McKinney de Royston. Our next graduate is Jeffrey Maddock. Jeff's dissertation focused on the application of methodologies related to practical science, technology, and engineering, to obscure the lines between humans and non-humans. Jeff hopes to challenge the norms of science education and encourages teachers to make themselves less comfortable with the inevitabilities of progress. Jeff's hood is bestowed by Associate Professor Erica Bullock. Our next graduate is Sandy Strabel. Sandy's dissertation is about veteran teachers' experiences during the emergency remote teaching caused by the pandemic. Framing the experiences through the lens of possible selves, these stories that she told in her dissertation are a powerful window into the context and motivation of that teacher group. She hopes to turn her PhD dissertation into a book, and her academic hood is conferred by Professor Doneen Hassett. Our next graduate is Charnel Chaston Long. Charnel's dissertation retells the story of an historically black scientific society and their collective efforts to transform science education. In the fall, Charnel will be returning to her alma mater, North Carolina A&T State University, as an assistant professor of science education. Charnel's hood is conferred today by Professors Maxine McKinney de Royston and Walter Stern. Our next graduate is Evan Moss. Motivated by her work mentoring pre-service teachers, completing their certification requirements, and as a former middle school science teacher, Evan's dissertation focused on the process of learning to teach, with specific attention on the emotional experience of that process. Evan is a strong supporter of Wisconsin's public schools, and her academic hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Beth Grau. Our next graduate is John Porco. John's dissertation is on how the imagination works at the intersection of social, emotional, and language learning. His future plans involve working with low-income communities to develop educational programming and partnerships. His academic hood is bestowed today by his advisor, Professor Doneen Hassett. Our next graduate is Kimberly Faulkner Omek. Kimberly's dissertation examines how pre-service teachers gain the knowledge, skills, and dispositions for anti-racist teaching. Kimberly is an assistant professor at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh in the Department of Teaching and Learning. She recently published an article in the Journal of Educational Supervision, and her hood is bestowed by her advisor, Associate Professor Maxine McKinney de Royston. Our next graduate is Susan Marie Stanton. Susan's dissertation maps the ways child support cooperation requirements facilitate the criminalization and incarceration of Black parents and children. She's looking forward to exhaling after graduation, continuing to work with Professor Pate and looking for long-term employment. Susan's academic hood is conferred today by Professors Gloria Ladson-Billings and David Pate. And finally, from the Department of Curriculum and Instruction is PhD graduate Kirk Anthony Parslow. Kirk's dissertation centered on the educational experiences of racialized immigrant youth. His hood is bestowed by Professor Doneen Hassett. So this concludes the conferral of hoods for PhD graduates in curriculum and instruction, and I imagine your hands are already getting a little bit tired, so you might want to shake them out a little bit because we've got some graduates to go here. Our next group are PhD graduates from the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis. Yay. First is Shiwei Tsu. Shiwei's dissertation is about how to develop future educators to incorporate inclusive approaches to teaching. In her three-study dissertation, Shiwei focused on three pressing issues in the community college context: institutional support, pedagogical transpiration, and faculty assets. In the fall of 2023, Shiwei will join California State University Stanislaus as a tenure-track assistant professor. She's hooded by Professor Shuili Wang. Our next graduate from Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis is Kirby Livingston. Yay. Kirby's dissertation focused on culturally inclusive and equitable teaching in higher education. This month, he started a position as an institutional research designer and analyst at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. His hood is bestowed by his advisors, Elton Krim. Where's Cliff? Elton Krim Jr. Good thing I'm checking. Okay. Awesome. Our next graduate is Abby Koberstein Hawkins. Abby's dissertation tells the stories of three white women teachers and how they made sense of educational equity over the course of a school year. Post-graduation, Abby plans to continue to work in the field of diversity, equity, and inclusion within an educational organization and looks forward to publishing her research. Her academic hood is conferred by Professor and Department Chair A.J. Welton. Our next graduate is Ben Conruff. Ben's dissertation focused on racial equity in two-year college-high school dual enrollment programs. He currently works for the Wisconsin Technical College System and plans to share his findings across the state to advance dual enrollment access for high school students. Ben's hood is bestowed by his advisor, Professor Shuili Wang. Our next graduate is Sylvia Fredericks Ramirez. Sylvia's dissertation is about the connection between working on campus while in college and student success for community college students. Sylvia is currently the Vice President of Administration at Madison College. Her academic hood is bestowed today by Clinical Professor Elton Krim Jr. Next is a name that will be familiar to all of us, Janelle Anderson. Janelle Anderson's dissertation, titled Care, Labor, and the American Teacher, focused on the creation of healthier and more equitable public schools by calling attention to teachers' work and the conditions under which teachers serve America's children. Janelle is currently interviewing for professorships in educational leadership, and her academic hood is conferred by her advisor, Professor Carolyn Kelly. Our next graduate is Erin Rose Hasty. Erin's dissertation is about community college governing board effectiveness. She has worked in board leadership consulting with M.M. Rosenberg and Associates for 12 years. She'll be starting her own firm in Pinedale, Wyoming later this year. Erin's academic hood is conferred by the best advisor ever, Professor Shuili Wang. Our next graduate is LaShawn Faith Washington. LaShawn is a proud community college graduate, world traveler, and first-generation college student. Her dissertation focused on the love-centered practices and symbolic relationships of Black women at predominantly white institutions. Starting this fall, she'll be an incoming tenure-track assistant professor of qualitative research at the University of Oklahoma. Her hood is bestowed by Professor Rochelle Winkle-Wagner. 'Cause I love you. 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 'C Our next graduate is Kimberly C. Anderson. Kimberly's dissertation is about discriminatory discipline and the impact of interactions with school resource officers and school security guards on Black females and Latinas. Kimberly's academic hood is bestowed today by Professor A.J. Welton. And our next graduate is Walter P. Parrish III. Walter's dissertation is a critical narrative inquiry that explores faculty experiences with academic bullying at four-year institutions. Since 2021, he has served as the Director of Diversity and Inclusion at the New York University Grossman School of Medicine, and he remains open to joining the professoriate. Walter's academic hood is conferred today by his advisor, Professor Shui-Li Wang. Our next graduate is Gary Walter Kilgus. Gary's dissertation focused on one Wisconsin technical college operating under state legislative outcomes-based funding and captured leaders' perceptions of the policy's impact. His 17-plus years as a dean and director in the Wisconsin Technical College system provided excellent scaffolding for his study. Gary's plans include consultation work with college and university administrators, helping them navigate tomorrow's challenges. Gary's hood is bestowed by clinical professor Elton Krim, Jr. Our next Ed Leadership and Policy Analysis PhD graduate is Scott Everson. Scott's dissertation is about gauging high school students' perceptions during a school-wide grading reform process that they experienced during high school. Scott is a former high school principal and current district office administrator. He someday hopes to work as a consultant, helping school districts with school improvement planning. Scott's hood is bestowed today by his advisor, clinical professor Tina Saltzman. Our next graduate is Yasmin Rodriguez Escudia. Yasmin is a first-generation college student whose dissertation focused on pre-service teachers' experiences and teacher identity development, specifically for Latinx women. Yasmin is a recipient of the Arvel S. Barr Fellowship and is currently interviewing for a researcher or evaluator position. Her hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Shui-Li Wang. Our next PhD graduate is Ann Starr. Ann's dissertation focused on mentoring faculty for teaching in academic medicine and developed the situational, individual relational, organizational, or CIRO grounded theory. Ann is the Director for Faculty Development Programming at the UW-Madison School of Medicine and Public Health, and will continue in this position for the near future. Ann's hood is bestowed by clinical professor Elton Krim, Jr., on behalf of Professor Cliff Conrad. Our next graduate is Megan E. Schmidt. Megan's dissertation explored identities of university professors and the relationship between faculty-student engagement and the development of faculty identities. She will continue her current role on campus, directing the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Mentoring. Megan's hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Carolyn Kelly. Our next graduate is Paris Dominique Wicker. Paris's three-paper mixed methods dissertation explored the personal well-being networks of Black and Indigenous college students. She will continue her scholarship as an incoming tenure-track assistant professor of educational leadership and policy at the State University of New York at Buffalo. Paris's hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Rochelle Winkle-Wagner. And last but certainly not least, from the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis is Viola J. Miller. Viola is graduating as the second PhD candidate in her family, and her dissertation focused on analyzing mentoring programs for first-generation students at community colleges. She explores their effect on retention and graduation from four-year institutions. Viola is currently interviewing for administrative positions in higher education, and her hood is bestowed by her advisor, Shuili Wang. So this concludes the conferral of hoods for PhD graduates in the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis. And before I continue with graduates from the Department of Educational Policy Studies, I'd like to ask the candidates from the departments of Kinesiology and Rehabilitation Psychology and Special Education to stand up and start making your way over to your left side of the room. So graduates from the Department of Educational Policy Studies. First is Daniel Berman. Dan holds a joint PhD in the departments of Curriculum and Instruction and Educational Policy Studies. His dissertation explored the history of social studies and citizenship education during World War II in the United States. Using sources from school reformers, teachers, and students, he argued that the war brought a series of content reforms to schools, but many of the teaching practices and assessment practices remained the same throughout the war. Dan's hood is bestowed by Professors Bill Reese and Lee Ching Ho. Our next graduate from the Department of Educational Policy Studies is Linda Marie Feng. Linda's dissertation examines how refugeehood, race, and class inform the educational experiences of Southeast Asian students. The daughter of refugees from Cambodia, Linda is the first Cambodian American student to earn a PhD from the Department of Educational Policy Studies. In the fall of 2023, she will become an assistant professor at the University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Education. Her hood is conferred by Professor Lynn Posey-Maddox. Our next graduate is Abby Beneke. Abby's dissertation examines teachers' sense-making and enactment of school discipline reform. And her hood is bestowed by her advisor, Associate Professor Erica Turner. And our next graduate from Educational Policy Studies is Maria D. Velasquez. Maria is a first-generation college student born in Mexico and raised in California. Her dissertation examined what systemic housing insecurity means for biracial and people of color, from working class families, as well as children and their schools. She deeply thanks her loved ones and will continue her line of scholarship as an Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access in Learning Environment Provostial Fellow at Stanford. Her hood is bestowed by Professor Lynn Posey-Maddox. So this concludes the conferral of hoods for PhD graduates in Educational Policy Studies, and now we will move on to PhD recipients from the Department of Educational Psychology. Our first PhD graduate is Subin Im. Subin's dissertation focuses on analyzing the effects of social-emotional learning programs that have been culturally adapted to improve usage with racially and ethnically minoritized populations. Upon graduation, she will continue her clinical training at an outpatient mental health clinic in Portland, Oregon, as a postdoctoral fellow. Her hood is bestowed by her advisor. I'm getting a blank here. I don't have the advisor's name.
Jen Frapp.
On behalf of Craig Alberts, by Jen Frapp. Sorry about that. Our next graduate is Alexandra Barber. Lexi's dissertation implemented the Resilience Education Program, a school-based mental health intervention, with Black students from the Madison Metropolitan School District. Then, she collaborated with participants to make the intervention more culturally relevant. She'll complete a postdoctoral psychology residency at a psychiatric hospital in Salt Lake City, Utah, and her academic hood is conferred by Professor Katie Eklund. Our next graduate is Wei-Tsung Liu. Wei-Tsung's dissertation is on quantitative methodology for practical psychological and educational measurement issues. Wei-Tsung's work as a postdoc scholar will begin at the University of Washington starting this coming fall semester. Wei-Tsung's academic hood is conferred by Professor Dan Bolt. Our next graduate is Megan Call. Megan's dissertation is focused on addressing implementation barriers related to family-school partnerships. She's excited to begin working as a school psychologist at the Beaver Dam Unified School District this coming fall. Her academic hood is conferred today by Associate Professor Andy Garbus. Our next graduate is Shuzi Meng. Shuzi's dissertation specialized in autism-related diagnostic and intervention services for school-aged girls and gender-diverse youth. Shuzi will start a postdoctoral fellowship with Harvard Medical School and Boston Children's Hospital this fall. Shuji aspires to provide equitable, interdisciplinary health care to all. Her hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Jen Asmus. Our next graduate is Madison McKee Weist. Weist. I had a 50-50 chance on that one and messed it up. Madison's dissertation is about promoting school belonging for minoritized youth through peer mentoring. She will continue her postdoc training at the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Public Health Psychiatric Clinics. She looks forward to a school psychology career that includes collaboration with schools, hospitals, and clinics to support youth mental health. Her hood is conferred by Professor Steve Kilgus. Our next graduate is Hanal Sung. Hanal's dissertation is about approaches to analyzing multimodal interactions in learning with technology. Hanal will be a postdoc scholar in the School of Education at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and hopes to pursue her career in academia. Her hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Mitch Nathan. Our next graduate is Tiffany Herder. Tiffany's dissertation is about how students learn with visuals in educational video games. And her hood is presented by her advisor, Professor Martina Rao. Next is Katie Lawler, receiving her PhD. Katie's dissertation is a qualitative study examining how families from minoritized backgrounds experience work with school problem-solving teams. For her postdoc experience, Katie will be working at Journey Mental Health as a clinician in the Behavioral Health in Schools program. Katie plans to become a licensed psychologist and work with children, families, and schools. Her hood is bestowed by Associate Professor Andy Garbus. Next, PhD graduate from educational psychology is Kelly Gregus. Kelly's dissertation focuses on exploring cognitive behavioral therapy's effects on the depression symptoms of autistic individuals. She currently works in Denver, completing psychological evaluations and providing therapy services. She plans to continue with predominantly clinical work after her degree. Her hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Jen Asmus. Next is Kylie Gorney. Kylie's dissertation focuses on detecting unusual behavior in educational test data, such as cheating and speeded behavior. This fall, Kylie will be joining Michigan State University in the Department of Counseling, Educational Psychology, and Special Education as an assistant professor of measurement and quantitative methods. Her hood is conferred today by Professor Dan Bolt. So this concludes the conferral of hoods for PhD graduates from the Department of Educational Psychology. And next we'll be moving on to graduates from the Department of Kinesiology. And our first graduate is Benazir Mira. Benazir's dissertation focused on the development of a mobile app for children with autism participating in an adapted horseback riding program. This summer, Benazir will begin her postdoc training in the UW-Madison Department of Kinesiology and pursue her passion of enhancing the well-being of people with diverse abilities. Her hood is bestowed by her advisor, Associate Professor Luis Colomna. Our next graduate is Tim Marks. Tim's dissertation examines the relationships between performance-based assessments of functional cognition in community-dwelling adults. He plans to begin a postdoc fellowship at the University of Missouri-Columbia at the end of the summer. His advisor is Associate Dean and Professor Dorothy Farrar Edwards, and his academic hood is conferred today by Dissertation Committee member, Assistant Professor Kristen Pickett. And our next graduate is Laura Andrea Prieto Almario. Laura's dissertation is about the design and implementation of physical activity interventions, with a focus on a program for autistic children called Fit Families. Her dissertation also plans for a future dance and physical activity intervention for Latino older adults. Laura will be a postdoc fellow in the School of Family Medicine and Community Health. Laura's hood is bestowed by her advisor, Associate Professor Luis Colomna. So that concludes the conferral of hoods for PhD graduates in kinesiology, and now graduates from the Department of Rehabilitation, Psychology, and Special Education. Our first graduate is Jae-Young Kim. Jay's dissertation focuses on identifying the psychosocial impacts of trauma in the context of employment. He will begin his new role this fall as an assistant professor in the Department of Counseling, Educational Psychology, and Special Education at Michigan State University. Today, Jay's academic hood is conferred by Professor Tim Tansey. Our next graduate, also familiar to us all, is Sasha Smith. Sasha's dissertation, as you heard, is focused on the employment experiences of university graduates with disabilities in the Bahamas. She hopes to introduce vocational rehabilitation services to persons with disabilities living in the islands. Sasha's hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Maliki Bishop. Our next graduate is Melinda L. Forsberg. Melinda's dissertation is about how pre-service teachers develop cultural identity, socio-political consciousness, and self-efficacy for culturally responsive classroom management. She'll continue working with future educators as an assistant professor at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater this fall. Melinda's academic hood is conferred by her advisor, Assistant Professor Haley Love. Our next graduate is Elizabeth Sikora. Elizabeth's dissertation examined the retention factors of early career special education teachers in Wisconsin. She plans to continue this study and follow the teachers' career decisions over time. In the fall, she will be an assistant professor of special education at the University of Wisconsin, Parkside, and her academic hood is conferred today by her advisor, Professor Kimber Wilkerson. Our next graduate is Yasmin Castrueda Rios. Graduating as a first-generation college student, Yasmin's dissertation is focused on the engagement of transition-age Hispanic youth with disabilities in vocational rehabilitation services. Yasmin will be starting her position as a tenure-track assistant professor at Michigan State University this upcoming fall. Yasmin's academic hood is conferred today by her advisor, Professor Tim Tansey. Our next graduate is Kai-Chi Zhou. I love that. Kai-Chi dedicates himself to helping individuals with disabilities achieve optimal rehabilitation outcomes. His dissertation is about the role of acceptance in the psychosocial adaptation process among transition-age youth with autism. He will start his job as an assistant professor at the University of North Texas this August. His academic hood is conferred today by Professor Malachi Bishop. Our next graduate is Hannah Fry. Hannah's dissertation explores the impact of virtues and psychosocial adaptation to chronic illness and disability for people with cancer. She has accepted the UW-Madison National Institute on Disability, Independent Living and Rehabilitation Research's Advanced Rehabilitation Research Training Postdoctoral Fellowship. Hannah's hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Dave Rosenthal. And our next graduate is Claire Stelter. Claire's dissertation focused on sibling experiences in transition planning for their brothers or sisters with disabilities. Claire will begin her position as a postdoc researcher this fall. Claire's hood is conferred today by Professor Tim Tansey and her father, Dr. James Stelter. So this concludes the conferral of hoods for PhD graduates from the Department of Rehabilitation, Psychology, and Special Education, and all of our PhD graduates for this year. Join me in congratulating them. Okay, we're almost there. We have our graduates with degrees of Master of Fine Arts to finish out our program from our Department of Art. And our first graduate with an MFA degree is Meg White. Meg makes paintings and films focused on contemporary domesticity and its reflection of emotional states. Her research is based in feminist studies, film history, architecture, and formalist abstraction. Meg will continue to develop her artistic practice as well as teach college-level interdisciplinary arts. Her hood is bestowed by department chair and chair of the thesis, oh no, sorry, we have the wrong chair here. The chair of her thesis committee, Fred Stonehouse. Got the wrong Our next graduate is Anne-Marie Sulio. Anne-Marie is an interdisciplinary artist and educator. She holds 2 Bachelor of Fine Arts degrees in fiber and material studies and sculpture from the Cleveland Institute of Art. Her artistic research is rooted in her lineage of fiber craftswomen, generational traditions, and her Italian heritage through photography and textiles. Her hood is bestowed by Associate Dean and Professor Faisal Abdullah. Our next MFA graduate is Teresa Audet. Teresa's research during her time at UW has focused on the intersection of craft, resilience, and mental health through sculptures made from carved wood, handmade paper, woven rattan, and sometimes robot parts. After spending the summer as a resident artist at the Museum for Art in Wood in Philadelphia, Teresa and her partner will relocate to Pittsburgh. Teresa's hood is conferred by Associate Professor Katie Hudnall. Our next graduate is Xinchen Li. Xinchen's MFA exhibition is an immersive installation with 3D printed furniture and projections that invites visitors to explore her memories and experiences of intimacy and belonging. She is seeking college-level teaching jobs going forward. Xinchen's academic hood is conferred today by her committee chair, Professor Meg Mitchell. Our next graduate is Jorge Ariel Escobar. Jorge's MFA exhibition focused on queer intimacy and short-term romances, where he further queered the photographic image by using the alternative process of lumen printing. His exhibition was funded by the Temkin Exhibition Award, and he has served as an Edgar's Fellow during his graduate studies. Jorge's academic hood is conferred today by Associate Dean and Professor Faisal Abdullah. Our next graduate is Monty Little. Monty Little, Dine, is a first-generation graduate student. His MFA thesis forefronts historic and contemporary erasures of various indigenous identities within the United States. His thesis surveys multiple treaties that marginalize agencies of assimilations and cultural removal from boarding schools. Monty's hood is bestowed by their advisor, Professor John Hitchcock. Our next graduate is Anthony Duval Bozanich. Anthony's MFA thesis exhibition was titled Luxury of Dirt, and it explored the cycles of damage and repair that weave the fleeting impermanence of nature that surrounds, supports, and renews us. It is only when you let go that you get everything. Anthony's hood is conferred today by Professor Fred Stonehouse. Another graduate we've gotten to know today, Praveen Marapelli. Praveen's MFA thesis exhibition, titled Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, is that close? Sorry. Is a Sanskrit phrase from the ancient Indian scripture, the Maha Upanishad. It emphasizes that the world is one family, with other themes such as interconnectedness, collectiveness, and togetherness of all beings, aligned with the Wisconsin idea, cultural preservation, community service, intergenerational engagement, youth education, and neighborhood revitalization. Praveen's hood is bestowed by Professor Lori Beth Clark. Our next graduate is Cullen Hauser. Cullen's thesis work explores the intersection of digital and analog mediums through both a material and conceptual union. Cullen's history with intaglio printing encouraged multimedia experimentation, utilizing resources like neon lights, holograms, and artificial intelligence to question our relationship with technology. Cullen's hood is bestowed today by Associate Dean and Professor Faisal Abdullah. So this concludes the recognition of MFA degree graduates, as well as our hooding celebration. Please join me one more time in congratulating all of our graduates.
All right. Thank you very much, Adam. Very much appreciate that. And I also want to just take a moment and acknowledge and ask you to join me in thanking our wonderful Office of Communication and Advancement and Events, who arranged this entire event and will be arranging all of the communications, including the posting of all of these lovely pictures. So we have a number of people in that office who are in the room, and if you would wave your hands and let's all turn around and look at them and thank them. And in particular, I want to thank Associate Dean for Communications, Marianne Spoon, who's done a wonderful job coordinating all of this. So thank you to everyone who made this such a special celebration. And now we get to do one final round of applause for our amazing graduates. So I think since we've got graduates congratulating one another, and I hope themselves, and friends, family, faculty, and staff graduating the graduates, let's all stand up, and let's do one rousing round of applause. Way to go, graduates. And this concludes our ceremony. For those of you who are going to the Cole Center, and I hope that's all of you, you need to be in your seats by 10 after 5. So that gives you some time to get more pictures taken and hopefully to grab lunch someplace. Again, thank you so much for coming. Congratulations and good luck.